I think those are very different from the other two types of Buddhism, and much more accessible, particularly when put into modern English words.
Yeah,
Okay.
granted, you know, from my point of view, I'm not identifying as a Buddhist.